Good evening and welcome to all the people who are here in the room. My name is Lydia Asafa-Dawson, and today I'm chairing on behalf of Councilmember Jack Walsh. And here are the other committee member here with me is Councilmember Susan Honda, and in the room we have Councilmember Paul McDaniel and Council President Linda Kochmar. And I don't think there's anyone on Zoom? Okay, so that's it. So with that, I think we'll start with approval. Are there any public comments? I'm sorry. All right, seeing none, we'll start with item A, approval of February 13, 2024 minutes. Any discussions or?
I move approval of the minutes.
And I second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Susan. Next item on the agenda, Senior Advisory Commission Quarter 1 update, and we have Amy Gladden at the podium. Thank you, Amy.
Good evening, committee members, Council President, and Councilmember McDaniel. My name is Amy Gladden. I'm here tonight to present the Senior Advisory Commission's Quarter 1 update to you. So far in 2024, the Commission has held 3 regular meetings, 1 Senior Commission Connection event at the Community Center, 1 special meeting for their retreat, and during their meetings, the Commission has been planning the upcoming Senior Health and Resource Fair. They've begun the process of updating the Senior Resource Guide for the Greater Federal Way, and we anticipate that the Resource Guide will be completed and printed this June. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon in the Hylobos Room at 2 p.m., and we welcome you to join us. The Council allocated budget for the Senior Advisory Commission for 2024 is $5,000, and to date, the Commission has used a little under $1,000. For the Senior Health and Resource Fair, the Commission has raised over $4,500 in vendor fees and sponsorships, and with the leftover funding from 2023's event, we have a working budget of $6,700. To date, we have 56 vendors that will be represented at this event. And we're really excited that we're not anticipating having to use any of our council budget for this event. We wanted to welcome you, invite you to please join us on Thursday, May 16th at the PAC from 10 until 1 to walk and visit our vendors and see our commission in action. And that's what I'm bringing to you tonight. Do any of you have any questions for me?
Any questions? I do. Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to thank you for all the work you do with the commission. I appreciate it.
So my question is, when we don't use this, but the funds allocated by city, do they lose it at the end of the year? Or does it keep building on?
I don't actually know. This is the first time that the commission has had a budget to work with, so we aren't really used to having something that we haven't earned on our own. So I don't know. I'll ask and I'll find out.
Okay.
Although I think
Don't
we
lose
could
it.
find a way to spend whatever we have to if we're going to lose it.
Yeah. Don't
I mean, one of the
Everyone else
commissioners,
does.
one of the commissioners did suggest a trip, but, you know,
Oh.
we said no.
If we're included? No.
We also do a printing. We have the senior brochure that we print, and, you know, we have other expenses, so.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is information only, so there's no action to be taken. Our next,
Can I just double check?
Yeah.
Amy, was that from 10? What was the time for that again?
It's from 10 until 1 on Thursday, the 16th of May.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
all right, next agenda item is a resolution authorizing the allocation of funds in accordance with 2023 South Kent Housing and Homeless Partners, SKIP, Housing Capital Fund recommendation. And Sarah Bridgeford, and I see SKIP partners here also, so.
Yes, I actually will be passing this off to Claire Goodwin, who is the executive manager of SKIP, who will be presenting. I do have one thing to note as I pull up the slideshow, that there was a Scrivener's error. So if you pulled the packet early, there was one place where instead of reflecting $468, or it should be specific, $119,468, it said $119,168. So that one has been corrected. And
right, good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee, Council President, and members of the council. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Claire Goodwin, and I am the Executive Manager for the South King Housing and Homelessness Partners, or SKIP for short. I'm excited to present to you today the SKIP Executive Board's 2023 recommendation on the Housing Capital Fund. This will be an annual process, and some of you may recall a similar presentation from me to your council last year at this time. So SKIP was formed in 2019 through an interlocal agreement between several city governments and King County to address the housing needs of South King County as a unified, coordinated, and collaborative coalition. And Federal Way was a founding member. SKIP currently has 12 member jurisdictions, 11 of which are listed on the slide, in addition to the city of SeaTac, who recently took action to join SKIP. So we are so excited to have them as part of our partnership. So Federal Way is represented by your city administrator, Brian Davis, who serves as a member on the SKIP Executive Board. And by way of background on SKIP's Housing Capital Fund, in 2019, Substitute House Bill 1406 became law, allowing cities and counties to recapture a portion of Washington state sales tax when it's used to support affordable housing initiatives. You may recall that the effective sales tax rate didn't change for the consumer, and instead the tax gets credited against the state sales tax. In 2020, House Bill 1590 became law, allowing jurisdictions to impose a 0.1% local sales and use tax to support affordable housing, behavioral health facilities, and related supportive services. Cities had a limited window to act and retain those revenues before King County collected that revenue. And like most cities in King County, Federal Way does not collect it, but 4 of our member cities do, and we pool those resources for the Housing Capital Fund, which is why you're going to hear about it tonight. In 2021, City Council authorized an interlocal agreement with SKIP, which allowed the pooling of sales tax receipts received under Substitute House Bill 1406 from each participating member jurisdiction for use by SKIP in funding affordable housing projects. In 2023, 2 of our member city councils authorized an interlocal agreement which allowed the pooling of sales tax receipts received under House Bill 1590 from both cities for use by SKIP in funding affordable housing projects. In 2022, SKIP launched the first funding round of the Housing Capital Fund, and last year you approved 2 projects for funding. And a quick side note and update on those 2 projects. The Burien Habitat for Humanity home ownership project has completed most of the civil work, including a sound wall and development of the utility infrastructure. And we anticipate closing on that project by the end of this month, along with King County. And the Mercy Housing Northwest Burien Family Housing Project is scheduled to apply for permits in late summer, and they anticipate beginning construction by mid-next year. So even though we funded that project last year, the project needed to secure additional funding this year in order to move forward, and they successfully secured awards from the Department of Commerce and King County. So this is the second of an annual process with SKIP and member jurisdictions to fund projects with these pooled resources through the SKIP Housing Capital Fund. Use of these pooled funds requires approval from each participating city council. Even though you have already contributed these funds to SKIP, your council will need to authorize the allocation of those funds to specific projects. This approach allows multiple cities to pool their funds for projects across South King County to maximize the creation of affordable housing overall and in each city. So SKIP opened the second annual Housing Capital Fund application in 2023. 6 projects applied for SKIP funding with broad geographic diversity throughout South King County. If you recall, our last funding round received 3 applications and all happened to be projects in Burien. So geographic diversity is one of our goals, and we made sure to get the word out this year, or last year, for this funding round, that the new funding source was available. The SKIP Advisory Board reviewed applications and forwarded its funding recommendation to the SKIP Executive Board that reflected the policies and priorities adopted by the Executive Board. After careful deliberation, the SKIP Executive Board concurred with the majority of the SKIP Advisory Board's recommendation and recommends funding 4 projects totaling $5,747,306, with $777,306 of the total sourced from Substitute House Bill 1406 revenue and $4,970,000 sourced from House Bill 1590 revenue, as described in the SKIP Executive Board memo dated January 17th, 2024, which was included in your agenda packet on page 19. The SKIP Executive Board's recommended projects and funding levels for each project are listed on this slide, and I'll briefly go through each one. So first, we have Mercy Housing Northwest Kent Multicultural Village in, you guessed it, Kent. It's a 190-unit new construction multifamily rental project located adjacent to the future Kent Des Moines Link Light Rail Station. The project will support households earning between 30% area median income, or AMI, to 80% AMI, with a 20% set aside for households with an intellectual and/or developmental disability, or IDD. The IDD units will benefit from on-site supportive services. A 30% set aside will be for families with children. The requested funding from SKIP is $1 million, and the same amount was recommended by the board. The special conditions include being a deferred contingent forgivable loan with no repayment as long as affordability and target population are maintained, and the covenant is recorded to ensure affordability for at least 50 years. Second is a project from Lehigh, located in unincorporated King County in Skyway. It's a 55-unit new construction multifamily rental project with on-site support services. The project will support households earning between 30% and 50% AMI, with a 75% set aside for households transitioning out of homelessness. The project will prioritize tenants with a connection to the neighborhood and includes an early learning center. The requested funding from SKIP is $2.8 million, and the same amount was recommended by the board. The special conditions are the same as the previous project. Third is a project from TWG called Pandean at Star Lake, located in Kent, adjacent to the Kent Star Lake Link Light Rail Station. SKIP funding would support the South Building, which is a 168-unit new construction multifamily rental project that will support households earning between 30 to 60% AMI, with set-asides for families and families transitioning out of homelessness or are at risk of homelessness, and households with an IDD. On-site supportive services will be provided. The requested funding from SKIP was $2,856,000, and the board recommended $1,170,000 due to their construction timelines being further out than the other applications we received, and that we had expended all of our funds for that funding round. Special conditions include being a deferred 1% interest non-forgivable loan to the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Partnership, and the covenant is recorded to ensure affordability for at least 50 years. And finally, we have Multi-Service Centers Victorian Place 2 in Des Moines, This is a 20-unit rehabilitation and preservation project supporting 5 households earning up to 35% AMI, 10 households earning up to 40% AMI, and 5 households earning up to 50% AMI. The requested funding from SCIP was originally $500,000, but an updated construction budget was submitted, and contingency funding was recommended by the Executive Board, bringing the recommended total to $777,306. Special conditions include being a secured grant with no repayment as long as affordability and target population are maintained, and the covenants recorded to ensure affordability for at least 50 years. This slide shows total amounts sourced from House Bill 1590 contributed by jurisdiction to the SCIP Housing Capital Fund, and of this total, the amounts by jurisdiction for each project. You'll see a similar breakdown for the substitute House Bill 1406 funds on the next slide. The first 3 projects we discussed today are being funded through House Bill 1590 funds pooled solely by the cities of Covington and Kent. This slide shows total amounts sourced from substitute House Bill 1406, contributed by jurisdiction to the Housing Capital Fund, and of this total, the amounts by jurisdiction for the rehabilitation project in Des Moines. You will also see the unallocated amount by jurisdiction to be used in future funding years and the amount that was carried over from 2022. We are seeking authorization from City Council to allocate the amount listed for this project under your city in alignment with the Executive Board's recommendation. This is $119,468 for the Multi-Service Center's Victorian Place 2 Rehabilitation and Preservation Project. So in conclusion, we are looking for your support to authorize the allocation of $119,468 from the city's contribution to the SCIP Housing Capital Fund to finance the affordable housing project we talked about today, per our interlocal agreement requirements. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Claire, for the presentation. Oh, yeah, it's on. Any questions? Councilmember
Thank you.
Hoda?
So the Pandian project, is that on Sound Transit property?
TWG purchased that one. That is not a surplused Sound Transit property, but the Mercy Housing one is on Sound Transit property.
Oh, okay. Did any Federal Way projects apply this year?
We received no applications for projects located in Federal Way this year, but we would love to this year.
Hopefully one day. Thank you.
Yeah.
Council President?
So you gave more information in your presentation than we had in our packet. So I'm trying to understand, this is the 1% sales tax that was initiated in 2019, correct? In King County.
So this is the substitute House Bill 1406 under RCW. I'd have to get it for you, 82-14-540. So it's the sales.
Sales tax.
Yes.
Yeah, so, and you said that of the 11 cities in South King County, most of them allowed the county to take the money, and 3 did not. Is that correct?
Oh, I see. So we're talking about I am talking about 2 separate revenue sources. So the
Yes.
one,
I understand that.
yep, so the one where, so the county does not collect the
Yeah.
1406 fund. So all the cities have that. But the other funding source from House Bill 1590, the 1/10
Right, that
Only-
1590 is what I'm asking about.
Okay.
So I'm trying to understand that, because I don't think we had a good presentation, at least I don't remember, when that passed. So the money, the sales tax collected by the county, now, we have very little to say about what the county does with that sales tax, because we've given away our ability to control that sales tax.
Essentially, yes. And the county funds their health through housing program
Correct,
with those
the
funds.
drug hotels that we're
Yeah.
concerned about. So, is there any way, since we've already made that decision, can we withdraw from that decision that we made?
So you are not the first to ask that.
Oh, I wonder why.
Yeah, and I've had conversations with our county representatives about that, or can we allocate some funds specifically for South King County, or, you know, how could this work? And they say no, that the funding it really gets allocated every year. So we have tried. We
You'd have to
tried
pass a new bill to rescind House Bill 1590 and provide the ability to correct that. Because we have no control over what the county is doing with the money. That's very frustrating for us.
Yeah, I understand, yeah.
So
And-
of the cities that didn't agree to have the county take the money, who were the three that did not agree, that kept the money?
Yeah, so in South King County, our 4 cities are the city of Kent, the city of Maple Valley, the city of Covington, and the city of Renton.
So
And
they kept the money.
they did, and we last year pooled 2 of those cities' funds specifically for the SCIP Housing Capital Fund. And this year, we'll be pooling an additional city's resources from that funding source, and we have plans to have conversations with our 4th city for that purpose.
So they essentially are receiving more funds to do what they want with without being controlled by the county. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I would say when we had that presentation, we made the decision based on the information we were given at the time.
And that's true.
I agree.
That's absolutely true.
Real quick, what were the 2 bills again? It was House Bill 1590, what was the other one?
Substitute House Bill 1406, and that's what we call it, and that's what it was back in the day when it was adopted. So the RCW might be easier for you to navigate, and I'm happy to provide those.
And that was the 8214? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, and it should be here in my memo. Let me double check for you. I can get that for you,
No problem.
Councilmember.
But
One
if-
of the statutes is RCW 82-14-540.
Oh, good, you see it, yes, that's it, yep.
Yeah.
And the other one is 82-14-530.
30.
So House Bill 1590 is .530, and 1406 is .540.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions for you. Actually, one is a comment. Maybe in 2019, there was an award that was given to SCIP members, and so there's one in our office from HDC. So, because they started it, right? HDC started the SCIP group, kind of, sort of, okay. So with the 0.1% sales tax, do any of these projects serve our residents, and how? Federal Way residents?
For the SCIP Housing Capital Fund. So currently, there's no projects planned for Federal Way because we haven't received any applications for projects. But that doesn't mean that we won't receive them this year or in future years. And our goal really is to use these funds to support projects in every SCIP member jurisdiction.
But people who need it from Federal Way can utilize or can be served in those other jurisdictions?
So it depends on the, hypothetically, sure. It depends on the, service providers that work with the developers and how tenants are selected. And, but yes, I would imagine there are likely some folks from Federal Way that are residing in them.
Okay, my question then particular is with Lehigh Project. It's take people out of homelessness. And so I'm wondering then, how that selection happens and a federal way people experiencing homelessness would be, or houseless would be.
Yeah, and so with the Lehigh project, I know they're prioritizing folks in the surrounding area. And with regard to some of our other projects, I know they utilize the coordinated entry system. And so it, I suppose, depends on where, you know, those individuals at that specific time are coming from. So,
Yeah, so that was my other questions around referral, is self-referral okay? Probably not, right? They have to go through some referral system in order to even be accepted.
I would say it's probably project dependent.
Okay.
Most of them, yes, would likely need to be signed up, you know, through the official channels to have these organizations even be able to identify them as potential tenants, so.
Okay, and so you're doing this presentation at all the other jurisdictions?
So you are my last jurisdiction.
So yes? And since we don't have any funding in there, what happens if we say no or whatever? I mean, can we even,
Well, you do have funding in here, right? You have.
which one?
The 100,000 for
For
Victoria.
the one
Place.
project.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah,
that one.
but
So is that the only one we're talking about then in this case?
So the approval that we need from each member jurisdiction is specific to the funds that we're using, that were sourced from your jurisdiction. So that is on the rehabilitation project in Des Moines that we talked about. So your funds, along with the majority of our SCIP members, the funding source is from that 1406 source, and so that's the one that's, we're seeking formal approval on. The other projects I talked about, I'm sharing that information with all the member jurisdictions because it is a part of our larger capital fund, and the executive board is made up of representatives from all of our member jurisdictions. They're the ones that are making the recommendation, and so I think it's important to share that out and let you all know what we're up to and the good work that's being done.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Council President?
Thank you, Chair. So Claire, the people, I'm looking at the amount of money here, that is a small amount coming from 1406, but obviously there's a larger amount coming from the 1%, because they're marrying that with the 1% from the sales tax for those cities the 4 cities that didn't allocate their money to the county. So those people would have a greater chance of getting a project through because they're going to have more money.
So the way that we have organized our housing capital fund and the process is that the funds don't need to support a project that's based in the jurisdiction that's providing the funds. So it just so happens that this year the city of Kent had 2 applications, and the city of Kent is providing their House Bill 1590 funds, and it is a
Right.
large amount, but
Right.
it's
So-
not, so,
So how can we, so obviously, we've given the money to the county, we can't get it back, so how do we pressure the county to allow us to use that money the way we see fit with the 1406 funds? Because you've got 1590 and 1406. Is there any way to do that?
I mean, you are welcome to write a letter, but I have very little influence at the county level, so. But I would say, you know, if the goal is for Federal Way to have a project, you know, funded with some of these funds, like that, just getting the word out that this funding source is here. We're still talking with developers that are learning about it as a new option. And it really is an important funding source for all of these projects because they're able to leverage the other funding that is available. And the county provides, you know, quite a bit of funding for the projects that we fund as well.
Sure, so let me ask you one last question. So with 1590 and the 1%, for example, with the hotel that, the Health Through Housing Hotel that they're building in Federal Way, is that, so a portion of that is theoretically from our citizens, the 1% sales tax from our city, correct?
So I don't want to speak for the county because I can tell you.
I'm just wondering if the county is putting more money in it than just the 1% from our sales tax.
Yes, yes, so they
I-
pool,
I would assume that.
yes,
Yeah.
they
Okay,
pool it all.
so, I think we need to discuss how this all is taking place. So it's not for you, it's just something that I think we need to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Paul.
Yeah, I have one follow-up question. One of the big things that I've noticed talking about is we didn't have any projects sign up for it. What do you find the requirements for these projects?
Yeah, so our executive board adopts annual guidelines that includes the amount of funding that's available for that year, eligible uses of the funds, who can apply, and our funding priorities, and we're in the process of adopting that right now. And I'd be happy to share that with the committee and the council, if that's helpful.
Do you know when the new guidelines, is it going to be guidelines for 2025 or is it guidelines for 2024?
Yep, so the executive board is scheduled to adopt this year's 2024 guidelines on April 19th, and so we'll publish that on our website and start getting the word out shortly thereafter. And that's when developers can start reviewing that and make requests for pre-application meetings. And part of our process is when we hear someone wants to apply, we immediately reach out to the jurisdiction to let them know that this is happening, and then we have those pre-application meetings with that city's planning staff. And we have a process in place as well to ensure that if that project isn't necessarily desired in that jurisdiction, that there's a process for saying, to skip at least, that wouldn't move forward for consideration at the skip level.
Gotcha. And when those guidelines come out, you'll be reaching out to a community development, and then they'll be able to let us know what the new guidelines are to check out?
So our staff work group member will certainly have that available. Sarah is our representative, and so, yes, that would, happy to share that out.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And if you know of developers, we also are encouraging all of our electeds to, in those conversations, to let them know, hey, like, have you considered, looking at the SCIP Housing Capital Fund, because it is a great revenue source for South King County.
Thank you.
Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. Sarah, do you know of any potential projects that we could use this funding for in Federal Way? Because when we voted to do this, we were told we would not make enough funding from this to do something on our own. That's why we allowed it to go to King County.
So you're talking about the 1590. I think that decision was made. If council wants to take a different action with the county, you're able to communicate with them. In terms of projects, I don't believe that there is a project in the pipeline that would, and I'm not going to say this for certain, but from my knowledge, when we would have a project that is both feasible and ready, I don't believe that there is one that would be ready for the 2024 application. However, it is something that we continue to look at. There will be surplus property, so tracking other funding sources and what's happening with Sound Transit, so that should we have a project come up, that we're able to make that connection to SCIP.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, I have a question. This is Jack.
Welcome, Jack.
Hi. So, hey, is this something that Fusion with some of their housing projects might be able to take advantage of?
There is,
hear me?
yes, there is potential that Fusion could be an eligible applicant. Again, it's like project readiness and feasibility for this year, but certainly in the future.
So
All right, thank you.
as a follow-up to his question then, can you use it for purchase or is it just rehab and construction?
Yeah, so acquisition of affordable housing is, or for the purposes of housing is an eligible
Eligible,
use.
okay.
For both funding sources.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So I guess we'd have to read 1590 and 1406 to see the difference, what the money can be allocated for, because obviously you're all about low-income housing. And 1590 apparently was broader than that, because they, can we get a copy of 1590? I think I need to see that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Happy to provide.
Sarah's saying, yes, thank you.
And you should know too, in our Housing Capital Fund guidelines, I mean, even though 1590 funds are eligible for like behavioral health facilities and services, our funding only funds the capital portion and the construction, acquisition. So just to clarify that the RCW will say eligible uses, but our members who pool those funds and for SCIP specifically say it's for capital. And the RCW specifies that 60% of that revenue must be set aside for capital. And so,
Okay. I move to forward the proposed resolution to the April 16, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Oh, no.
Jack?
Jack, you're here.
He's not here, maybe.
Is
Maybe he comes and goes.
Jack, can you hear us?
Apparently
Okay,
not. 2-0.
2-0 then, motion passed. Thank you. Thank you so much, Claire, for your presentation. All right, next item on the agenda is item number D, Internet Crimes Against Children, ICAC Memorandum of Understanding between Seattle Police Department, SPD, and Federal Way Police Department, FWPD. And
Evening. Council President and council members. I am Thaddeus Hodge with the Federal Way Police Department, and I am honored to be representing you guys tonight in this policy question. The policy question in front of you today is, should the City of Federal Way Police Department enter into a memorandum of understanding with the City of Seattle Police Department to accept up to $10,000 in funding for participating in the ICAT task force. ICAT stands for Internet Crimes Against Kids. A little background. Federal Way PD is part of the Regional Internet Crimes Against Children, ICAT Task Force, which investigates crimes involving sensitive material as part of National ICAT Task Force. The Regional ICAT Task Force is maintained by an interlocal agreement for which the Seattle Police Department is the lead agency. This MOU between the Federal Way Police Department and the Seattle Police Department will allow Federal Way PD to receive up to $10,000 for the cost of training, travel, equipment, and supplies for conducting and participating in ICAT investigations. This source for the funds provided under the MOU is a federal grant award. The ICAT training is very specific. It's very specialized, and the training is not very local. A lot of the training is on the East Coast, and so therefore, a lot of our detectives aren't able to go because of the funding restraints that we have for our training. ICAT has decided to give us this money so we can send our detectives to get this vital training to make them more proficient in their operations. Right now, I think we have either one ICAT child investigator, and the type of investigations they do, if you guys remember, the Catch a Predator, where they set up on the computers and they're online looking at people, that's the type of training that they're going to receive and the type of training that they're going to do and try to catch these people doing the bad things in the community. I really do think this is worth accepting so we can get our detectives trained and up to par with the rest of the individuals who are doing that. That's all I have. Do you guys have any questions I may answer for you tonight?
Thank you, Commander Hodge. Are there any questions?
I have a question. So in Federal Way, do we have very many cases that would require a detective to investigate this?
Ms. Honda, yes. Yes, we do.
That's unfortunate.
Our one detective we have who is assigned to it full-time has 16 cases right now in his caseload.
Wow.
So, I mean, let's just say yes.
That's very sad. I'm sorry to hear that. So, yeah, I don't have any other questions. The more training we could provide, the better we can serve the people that we work for here in Federal Way and help those kids.
And I might add that this MOU covers everything. I mean, there's nothing out of pocket from the city. It covers the airfare, the housing, the per diem, car rental. It's 100% refundable to the city once they go to these trainings.
Okay?
Thank you. Councilmember?
Yeah, when this first came up, I had some of the same questions and had an email sent over by the chief on that. My question now is, now that I understand this better, is are we having any prosecutions for these actual crimes, or are we just tracking? It's the 16 or the 20 that we had last time, are we actually seeing prosecutions for this?
Councilmember McDonald, I would say yes. To be specific on what would they actually prosecuting, you will have to talk to the detective commander about that, but I know that our detective is not, he is fully investigating these cases, and he is forwarding them forward for prosecution. This is a serious crime, and we want to get everyone involved prosecuted if we can, so yes.
Now I'll reach out to the chief. Thank you.
Yes.
Council President?
So, thank you, Chair. So, hi, Commander. So let me get this straight. Could this be kids against kids?
Most of the time, these type of cases are not kids against kids, it's adults against kids.
And are the persons that are being victimized, are they aware of it?
Eventually, they're aware of it because they have to come to our light and we have to investigate it, so yes.
So it normally, is it like a family member or?
It's all around. It's all around. It could be someone from Tennessee on Instagram saying that they're a 12-year-old person and they're really 55 years old. It just varies on what it is.
And
There's no
trying to
real
get them to
specific.
meet with them?
Yes, trying to get to me, trying to get them to come to
that's the
them,
problem.
talking to them,
Sure.
sending pictures.
Yeah. So have we had any missing children because of that?
Not to my knowledge, no, ma'am.
Not yet?
No.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we need some kind of a information out to the public.
I don't think we need to put out information. This is, I don't want to put you, say there's alarm that this is something that's overboard right now. Unfortunately, this is just normal investigations that go on in a police department.
Okay. Okay. I was thinking about telling parents to put, filters on their children's phones so that they could have some.
That is always a good thing to do, and I'm sure I will talk to our Tiffany, who is our internet person, and have that put out sometime
Yeah.
over the next couple of months, because regardless if it's a crime or not, it's always good to have
It
filters on
reminds
stuff.
parents
Yes, it
that
reminds parents, yes.
They need to put some security, so.
Oh,
because
definitely.
they're not aware of it. Kids are on the phones all day long.
Yes, they are, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. My question is, how many detectives do we have doing this work?
Right now, I think we have about 10 detectives, and assigned to the, full-time assigned to it, we have one right now.
So that's the one that we're going to send for training?
That's the one that would be
these
sending
months?
majority of this training, yes.
Okay, just one person, or?
It depends. He does have someone that works with him, so they are also able to go to this training, but you have to be a member of ICAT, which is Federal Way is a member, so we can send as many detectives as we want to send, but has to be approved in this type of training to go to it.
Thank you so much. Okay, I see no other questions, so
I move to forward the proposed memorandum, I can't even speak to it, of understanding to the April, is it 16th? Because it says 9th on here. Is that the council meeting?
on the next one.
16th, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second?
Second. Okay.
There you are. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Thank you.
Motion passed unanimously. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you. Good seeing you guys tonight.
Stay
Good to see you
safe.
too. Next item is park signage contract amendment, and we have Autumn presenting.
Good evening, Chair, Council President, council members, and committee members. The policy question before you is, should the City Council approve the contract amendment for extreme graphic signage? The backstory on extreme graphic signage, this amendment will take us through 2027 and will also extend our compensation for park signage. We've seen an uptick in needing to replace certain different signs and upgrade them. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I have Jason Kerwin as well if you guys have any questions.
Are we changing the design?
As far as I know, we don't have any design changes.
Yeah, there's no design change right now, but if you kind of drive through Celebration Park, you can see the rule signs are faded or have been tagged and can't be cleaned anymore. We redid the parking lot at Lakota Park last year. Part of that project was to put new monument signage there. It's old and worn out. So it's just, this is a vendor we use on a regular basis, and the money's expired in the previous contract, so we just want to continue those services through an amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Jack, do you have any questions?
I wonder if he's driving or something.
Yeah, okay, go
So
ahead.
Madam
I
Chair,
don't have any questions. Thank you.
Madam Chair, before you proceed, I just want to note something for the record, is that the agenda had the introduction of the new PAC general manager as item E, and we're on item F, so we flip-flopped that. I just at least wanted to note
Okay.
that here for you all, so we make sure we handle things appropriately. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was going back, but thank you for that. Okay.
So I move to forward the proposed parks and facilities signage contract amendment to the April 16th, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
I second the motion.
Okay, this motion's been moved in second. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed unanimously. All right, thank you for that. And next agenda item is introduction of the new PAC general manager, and it's Autumn again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, as your agenda states, we wanted to take the moment to introduce our new Performing Arts and Events Center General Manager, Stacia Winters. Stacia joins us from Colorado and has only been here for about 3 days, but has hit the ground running. And to just give you an opportunity to say hello, ask any questions, and then I'm sure you guys will be seeing her around. We will provide a full PAC update in May on our next Parks Committee meeting, once she's had a little bit of time to get her feet underneath her and evaluate everything.
Thank you.
Hi, yeah, I'm Stacia Winters. I'll just give you a brief run over of my experience and what brought me here. I was an event manager and a director of events and built a bunch of events from the ground up, as well as ran concerts and all kinds of other sporting events, all kinds of things at an arena for about 5 years. And the last year and a half, I was the assistant general manager at 3 venues in Grand Junction, Colorado. So we had an amphitheater, a theater that was similar size to the PAC here, and then a convention center as well. So I've done meetings, all of that kind of stuff, and I've run events, operations, food and beverage, ticketing, kind of all around. I've had a little bit of experience in everything and a lot of experience in a few things. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited about some of the initiatives that are happening at the PAC and working with the Arts for Youth program, those kind of things. I'm really excited to hit the ground running and see what we can do to continue improving, as well as continuing the work that they're doing already.
Thank you so much, and welcome. Are there any questions?
Well, welcome to Federal Way. We're glad you're
you.
here. Is there anything you would change at the PAC at this point?
I am definitely still learning everything, of course, and kind of getting an idea of how things have been going. I know based on what Autumn and I have talked about, as well as things that I've seen, I think that there's a lot more opportunity with Arts for Youth and maybe some different event mix that hasn't been brought into the pack as much. There's so many beautiful meeting spaces, as well as the gorgeous view and the patio, that I think that we could do some really cool events, as well as potentially working with maybe some of the concerts that we've done to do some pre-show events and things, just to get the word about the pack. I know that it's still a fairly new facility, so to get the word out a little bit more and get more people to know about it and coming out for events regularly.
So how long is the facility considered fairly new?
I would
Because-
say 10 to 15 years, to be honest.
10 years? Okay.
Yeah, I worked at another venue that was about 15 years old, and we still had people who felt like they hadn't heard about it, because unless you have a show that interests you, a lot of times you don't know about those things. But I would love to jump on top of that and get more people to hear about it for sure.
Okay, just wondering, because we continue to hear it's fairly new, but it's been here for a while, so.
Yeah, honestly, I would say in the industry, we consider pretty new to be 10 to 15 years, because that's when you're really hitting your stride. All of your equipment, kind of starts to hit towards its lifetime is at that like 15-year mark. So it's still all very new, very state of the art, very awesome.
Then it becomes new all over again.
Slowly, it takes time.
All right, thank you. Welcome to Federal Way.
Thank you.
Council President?
Oh, also welcome, thank you. How big is Grand Junction? Just curious.
About 100,000 people.
So it's similar?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So
very
thank you. Do they get funding from the state or federal?
It's a city-owned venue down there as well. All three of the venues we ran down there were
They're
city.
all city, but do they get any funding from sales tax or?
There is some. We get some of the lodging tax went towards like our convention center account. That account was very interesting because each building had its own account, so they were all funded a little bit differently. So there was a little bit, but it was mostly city funds.
Interesting. How much did it cost to run it every year?
Off the top of my head, they're all different accounts. I wouldn't have that information
Oh,
off the top of my head.
just curious. So, just as a suggestion, that we haven't really fully developed having weddings there. And that might be something you might also look at, because you mentioned the patio, and
Yeah.
you could do a lot of wedding venues.
Absolutely, yeah. I know, I was actually just talking to our food and beverage director today, and I know we have a wedding coming up this summer. But that's definitely one of the untapped markets
Yeah.
that I think would do excellent there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Jack, do you have any questions? You're on mute.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So, yeah, I was just going to say that no questions really, but welcome. We look forward to working with you. Sorry that I'm not there in person to introduce myself, but we definitely look forward to working with you. And I do think that the PAC has a lot of potential that has not yet been realized, and hopefully we can work together on realizing that potential.
Yeah,
And look forward to meeting you soon.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really great time here.
Yeah, thank you. And I personally, of course, are interested because I would like to see your application for the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. So I look forward to working with you. in
Yeah,
capacity.
that, I will say, like, that was a convention center thing, because of the convention center brought rooms to the hotels, so that was kind of very specific the way that worked. That's pretty standard, I think, for convention centers. I'm not sure as far as theaters and how that would tie in.
Right. No. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think, did you have something to add, Autumn?
Thank
Oh, Jack, you have any question, any comments or question?
No, nothing further. I will make one unrelated comment. My phone is almost dead, so at any point I may be leaving you. So anyway, just an FYI.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jack, when you come back, we want to see a cowboy hat from Texas.
I don't know about a cowboy hat, but I'll probably come back with a sunburn. On top of my head where the cowboy hat should be.
Thank you. That item was information only, so the next agenda item is electrical line and fiber optic easement on Lakota Park property, and we have Jason Gerwin presenting.
I have the agenda a little bit different.
Yeah, I do too.
Councilwoman?
I wonder if your agenda item is, hold on, let me bring you my copy of the agenda.
What did I skip?
Oh, that's weird. So, yeah, next is the grant acceptance, and then this, and then that one's I and J. So why don't you just keep that one? I have it over there.
Okay. The right presenter, though, right?
I think so. I'm on tap for the next three.
Okay. All right, sorry about that. Next agenda item is Department of Commerce grant acceptance, Celebration Park Field 8 turf.
I will preface this that this agenda item and the next agenda item kind of tied together. So I may reference either one of them back and forth. But the policy question before you is, should the city council accept the Department of Commerce grant for Celebration Park artificial turf conversion in the amount of $822,000 and authorize the mayor to execute the associated grant agreement? And so we applied for this grant in early 2023. It was actually former recreation manager Cody Geddes that applied for it. And we received notice in July of 2023 that we were awarded $822,000. Due to the slide project going sideways and some other priorities, we didn't have a lot of time to focus on it, so it took a little bit of a back burner timeframe. We also knew that this year was going to bring the RCO grant cycle. Parks grants are on a 2-year cycle, and it's heavily funded every other year based on the state budget. And so with that being said, that's the reason for the delay in bringing it to you. But in conversations with Mayor Farrell and City Administrator Brian Davis, we are suggesting and recommending that we approve this grant. This grant does not provide the funding to complete one field, but the grant does allow for you to use it as matching funds, hence where this year's RCO grant cycle and the next agenda item come into play. And so with that being said, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Paul, you have a question?
Yeah. So what does this take us? I know it's only for the one field, but where does this take us? What do we need to complete the one field then?
And so that's where the next agenda item comes into play. And so you're about 1.5 to 1.7 to do a complete field conversion. And so this 822,000 gets us halfway to one field. Okay. And you'll see in the next request, we are going to be requesting the funds in a grant in RCO to complete all of Field 8 is where you take this Department of Commerce grant. We feel like we're well positioned in the RCO application and in talking with the grant managers that we're a real contender to be funded. And so that's where kind of our confidence comes in. Number one, we don't want to turn down the Department of Commerce grant because you do that and you start to not have a good reputation with them, and we want to have a good reputation with the Department of Commerce so that we're in line for future grants as well.
Gotcha. So if we get the other grant funding, we will just, if we have the money, we'll do one. We're not going to wait for money for both. We'll be able to do one. We'll start with one.
No, this has been a goal of council to kind of convert all 8 fields at Celebration for some years, and it's been a priority. It's in our pros plan. Us as a city coming up with $14.5 million to do all the fields at once, pretty cumbersome. Yeah. And so we're taking the baby step approach and trying to maybe go one step at a time. I think in a perfect world, we would do 2 offs, 2 at a time, at 4 cycles to get your 8 fields completed. But if that's not available to us now, we do the best we can with what's out there and available. And so the reason why I think this is a good thing as well is these all have a lifespan, 12 to 14 years. And if we built all these fields at one shot, all of them are going to wear out at the same time, and then you're back to this real cumbersome problem again, right? Of you've got to have a lot of money to replace all those worn out fields. Where if we cycle them at 2 over, 2 fields for 4 cycles, that makes it more manageable for upkeep and replacement as it evolves, and it kind of keeps you on a cycle. So we see that there's some real logic there.
Okay, so it sounds like we won't even start a project till we have enough money for 2 fields.
No, we would start with one.
Oh,
I'm
you would.
saying an ideal
yeah.
situation for the city would be the 2 fields, but to me, Director Hutton, we got to start somewhere, and we got to start making steps
I agree.
towards that goal.
I agree with that. And then,
you.
I'm new to some of these grants. Is it normal that the Fed will keep a percentage to give us the money?
Yeah, unfortunately.
50,000, nice, thank you.
Well, and whether that full 50,000 will be taken, we don't know at this time. It depends on how that sorts out, but we wanted to tell you what the maximum they could
Yeah.
withhold from us is.
Oh, no, I thought that was
Yeah, it's
interesting.
rich.
And then will this, once we do get the grant, will that fund go into a restricted?
It would go into a CIP, Capital Improvement Project Fund,
Okay.
and would be reserved for this sole purpose.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have some questions. So when this came up, it sounded like a really super good idea, but yesterday there was an article, a national article about how cities and counties are moving away from artificial turf because of the environmental impacts. So is this still a really good idea to do our fields with the environmental issues that are known with turf at this point?
And so I did read the article that you had forwarded on, Councilwoman Honda, and know that this is something that we have been tracking for years, my entire career. I believe the Parks Department has reported to the City Council 3 times on the crumb rubber issues and concerns. And it's something that we kind of keep our ear to the ground, and we talk with other regional players, and at national conferences, we're paying attention. What we know as fact is there is no proven case that this causes harm to individuals. A few years back, there was some concern from a couple of goalies at the University of Washington that both contracted cancer, and there was being some things being attributed to that it was crumb rubber. That was not founded, and there's no definitive proof that it is or it isn't. But to me, there's enough bells being sounded that we have got to be aware of it. Right now, we believe this is the right course of action for the city because it gives us the most playability. The other factor that we rely on is if you look at pretty much any NCAA university, all students, they all have artificial turf. They all practice and play games on artificial turf. Pretty much all major league sports, football, soccer, play on artificial turf. And NCAA is much bigger than us, and if there were concerns and people were getting sick because of it, I believe we would see some of these major corporations, sports corporations, be exiting out of that. That's not what we're seeing, but again, I'm not a scientist, I can't confirm whether this is causing problems or it's not. But my job as a professional, John's job as a professional is to be aware, stay on the latest reporting, news. I follow a couple of university sectors that do studies on this. University of Oregon being one, University of Tennessee being another. And they regularly do studies on these. And so we're reading those complete scholarly theses and trying to absorb that information. If at any time we saw some definitive evidence, I think we would absolutely need to change course. But at this time, based on the information we have to make the decisions on the best information we have. And right now, there's nothing showing that there are those
So
issues.
I'm wondering if instead of trying to do all 8 fields, we do just half of them in artificial turf, just in case we have people who want to rent those fields on real grass instead of artificial, knowing that there is some concern out there.
Yeah, and we're it's well down the future line before we're going to get to have all 8 fields. And so as more fields or potential grant funding becomes available, we'll continue to have these discussions with city council. And again, we don't want to do harm to the environment. We don't want to do harm to kids playing on our fields or adults playing on our fields. And so, again, we've got to make the decisions based on the best information we have, and that's how we're factoring our decision right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, you have-
I actually have one follow-up question. If Councilmember Honda is correct, and it does turn out that that happens in the future, are these funds required for strictly asphalt, or not asphalt, but for AstroTurf, or can they be used for field improvements of any kind?
So the funds from the Department of Commerce and RCO will be specifically for artificial turf,
Okay.
because that's how we're requesting it. If there are found to be problems in the future, I imagine the city will jump on board any class action lawsuit that's going to occur against these companies, because that's generally what happens in this
Gotcha.
this country.
Just wanted to check. Thank you.
Understood.
Are there any other questions? All right, seeing none.
Okay, so I have to read this little tiny print.
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, well, look, you see
You want me to
what
do
this-
it?
Yeah. I move to forward the proposed acceptance of the Department of Commerce grant to the April 16th, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, you're there. Sorry, Jack.
Oh, no, still here at 2%.
All right. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Jack. I'll keep checking with you. I apologize.
No problem, no problem.
All right.
And before
Thank you, Lydia, for chairing.
All right, next agenda item is,
Before you continue, I just wanted to clarify, we uncovered the discrepancy with the agendas, is that the packet agenda was different than the standalone agenda. All of the items are on there, they're just in a different order. So that was the reason for the confusion. So let's go ahead and proceed. I just at least wanted to clarify that so folks weren't terribly confused.
so continue with the paper you gave me, though. All right. Thank you for the clarification. All right, next agenda item is item I, electrical line and fiber optic easement on the Lakota Park.
Nope.
It's the RCO.
Celebration Park Field and artificial turf funding.
And then what you're
Oh, yeah,
talking is-
resolution.
Yes.
Thank you. Celebration Park Field 8 artificial turf funding.
And so this is where I mentioned the first one and this one have a tie together. And so Parks Manager George Richen had previously brought forward the request for us to apply for the RCO grant, which City Council approved. And so this, the policy question before you here is, should the City Council approve a resolution to authorize all documents and actions necessary to accept the RCO Youth Athletic Facility Grant, including matching funds identification for the Celebration Park Field 8 artificial turf conversion? And so this is why it's a little goofy. Normally, we would have an award, and then we would come and ask you to allow us to accept and authorize. Based on the City Council calendar and the RCO grant calendar, they don't align very well. And so part of our application requires that we have this resolution approved by City Council in advance of final submittal of the grants. It also requires that we show and prove our matching funds for this grant. And then it also has a form for authorization of who is accepted for electronic signatures for processing and moving this grant forward. So, again, we've been given approval to apply for this. This is kind of to allow us to complete our application packet and have that submitted. Again, it feels a little bit of cart before the horse, but it's because of the way the calendar lines up with the RCO grant application. And so, as we talked about previously, we have identified the Department of Commerce grant as a portion. That Department of Commerce grant can be considered matching funds, which is which is pretty cool. So it takes very little city money. If we are awarded the RCO grant in conjunction with the Department of Commerce grant, we could do Field 8 and convert that to artificial turf for only $3,000 of city fund money, and that would come out of our major maintenance account, which is already approved and authorized via city council. And with that being said, I would entertain any questions.
Here. Councilmember Honda?
How many RCO grants do we have in the city, and what parks are they associated
So
with?
there's 4 different categories available this year, and we are in the Parks Department trying to apply for 2, or is it 3? 2? But there is a potential third that we're looking at. There's a land and water access that may be privy for the Steel Lake Dock, and maybe acquiring some funding for the Steel Lake Dock. But again, we will bring all of those forward as they're available. But it's heavy cycle on the even years. And so, like I say, there's 4 or 5 available this year, and 3 that we feel like we could manage and have the ability to apply for, and then actually carry forward if we were granted the money.
That's good to hear, but how many do we have that we've accepted over the years? Because
Ooh.
it's pretty, these are pretty strict. You do
Oh,
what
yeah.
they say,
Yep.
or you're in big trouble.
Yeah, and I would have to go back and do a little research, because several of the RCO grants, RCO used to be called the IOC, the IAC, Interagency for Outdoor Recreation, something to that effect. That may not be exactly right, but it was rebranded as the Recreation and Conservation Office. And so I can think of, just off the top of my head, at least 5 parks, because part of the requirement when you accept this money is you will put a little sign at the park that denotes that they gave us funding, and it's literally about that size.
Right.
Maybe 5 by 5. So it's not a huge sign, but we usually affix them to our monument signs. And RCO comes around every couple of years, and if the sign's been vandalized or taken off, they mail us new ones and require us to put them back up. And so they are restrictive, but it's the major source of funding that we have available to us from grant funding. There's not as many grants like there are for transportation or those sorts of avenues. But this is a big reason why we haven't been very active in the grants in parks in recent years. The lack of a park planner and so many other priorities, we just haven't had the ability to manage it. And this is one of the big reasons I'm pushing for a capital projects manager, because it gives us the ability to apply for more and manage more.
Well, the reason I ask is because there was, confusion when the council voted to use the skate park property, that part is Steel Lake property, for the maintenance yard. And, we found out that it was RCO granted to us, so it would be good to know what other parks have RCO money attached to them.
Yeah, I absolutely concur, Councilwoman Honda. I think a little side project that I'm going to have to create is just getting a inventory of those grants and having that housed somewhere on a drive in the Parks Department drive, so that at any time, if we need that information, we can go to
Right.
the drive and pull it and be accurate to what we receive, because we're responsible for that, and we should be able to have a solid tracking of it. So I concur with what you're saying, and we'll add that to my work plan this year.
Not that I want to add any work to your work plan, but thank
Oh, we got plenty, and it comes every day. That's if there isn't problems, I don't have a job. So we'll take them as they come.
All right, I move to forward the proposed resolution to the April, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have one quick question.
Sure.
Are any of these grants, are you working with the grant writers that we've hired on any of these, or are these strictly through Park?
So on these particularly, we have not been working with the grant writers or economic development. Tanya's kind of new.
Gotcha.
She's getting settled in pretty quick, though, and I can tell you I've been in communication with her on some other grants with that group that she's hired, but these specifically, Parks Department has been aware of. We've been waiting for this cycle to happen, and so this is all Parks.
Gotcha, thank you.
All right. I'll start again. I move to forward the proposed resolution to the April 16th, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second? I'm waiting for Jack. He's gone. He's gone, okay.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Oh, aye.
Aye. Motion passes 2-0.
If I could, I would like to make one statement, and it's, I need to give a lot of kudos to our new Parks Manager, George Richen. He has really embraced the grants, and, he's been with us for over 20 years. And when he was promoted to Parks Manager, he said, I'm looking at maybe a decade left, and how can I have a big impact and leave a legacy here in the city? And that's one of the things he's latched on to and really been working hard towards. And so it's pretty exciting, and I'm pretty proud of George.
Thank you for that, and tell him thank you from us. All right, next agenda item I've been wanting for us to get to. I've been trying. Electrical line and fiber optic easement on Lakota Park property, and back to you.
Yes, and so policy question here is, should the city council authorize the mayor to execute an easement in Lakota Park property for a PSE electrical line to supply power and a fiber optic line to the approved Dish Wireless cellular site and accept the compensation as proposed? And so you may recall about probably 14 months ago, we approved a new lease with Dish Wireless, and they needed to do some upgrades. We approved those, but what they came to me after that was all done is they said, we realized we need to have an electrical line to power these upgrades and improvements, and we need a fiber optic line. And so at that point, like I say, they're in a lease for us. They pay us a monthly lease to have that site and that cellular site, but they wanted to impact our property by putting a power line and fiber on there. Now, the impacts are fairly minor. All of the infrastructure is underground. It's out of play in kind of an outlying area, so it really does not affect the park in any ways, and you don't even really know it's there. And so we worked with them and used a standard Public Works formula for calculating what that easement is. And so, we're looking at $15,531 to execute that easement that we would receive, would go into the general fund for this easement. It's the right thing to do. We already approved the lease, and the lease is to have the cellular property, and if they don't have the infrastructure to support that, no real reason to have a lease. So it's just kind of cleaning up an error that they had forgot to do on the original lease agreement, and be happy to entertain any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I just got two quick ones. Is this a one-time, or is this baked into an annual fee?
This is a one-time.
All right, and then the fiber optic, is it on our network, or are they bringing their own network?
No, they're bringing their own network.
Okay, that was it.
Thank you.
I move to forward approval of the Lakota Park electrical line and fiber optic easements and compensation as proposed to the April 16th, 2024 consent agenda.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor?
Sorry.
Aye.
Let's just get down to it.
One more item. Thank you.
Thank you for your continued support, Council. We appreciate it.
And thank you for their presentations. We appreciate you. Next agenda item, MOU with the Historical Society of Federal Way, Amendment 2, and Director Hutton.
Good evening, and I was hoping you were waiting for me, but obviously you were eager for Jason. So I do have good news. I'm the last item of the evening. So mine is very straightforward. This is just a policy question. Should the City Council approve the Memorandum of Understanding Amendment Number 2 with the Historical Society of Federal Way? You have a staff memo that outlines what we're doing. We love our relationship with the Historical Society. We have a strong relationship with them. We want that to continue. And so we're just extending this amendment through the end of this year and looking forward to moving forward for many more years.
Okay, thank you. Paul, any questions?
Yeah, I've never seen one before, so I'm kind of curious. I saw we're adding 15,000. What does the money go for? Is it building upkeep, or what's the?
This helps them to, we have a partnership, but obviously that the Historical Society has limited amount of ability to this is support of the city support of the Historical Society and the good work they do on behalf of the city in many areas, bringing awareness of our historical significance in the area. They put on programs and exhibitions of historical items, and so they do a great job, but they have limited resources. They're doing better every year at adding more and more and getting more and more support. But this is just support of their efforts.
Okay. And then is this the building over by Still Lake then?
Yes, the annex. Mhm.
The annex? Now, does these funds help?
Well,
keep-
actually, this helps them keep in business. This is separate
Okay.
from the lease on that, and then the cabins you'll be seeing soon on the cabins over at Hylebos.
Okay.
So we're in several agreements with the Historical Society.
This is strictly for like more of an administrative, it's not for capital improvement, it's not for any of that kind of stuff?
Correct.
Okay, that was my question, thank you.
Thank you.
I support anything we could do to help the Historical Society. I'm very glad that they're here in Federal Way, helping preserve our history. All right, are you ready? I move to forward the proposed MOU Amendment 2 to the April 16th, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion pass, aye. Motion pass 2-0.
Don't forget to vote.
Thank you. Are there any other items for discussion?
I have three things I'd like to bring up.
Okay?
So I have not served on this committee for quite a while. The first 4 years I was on council, I was chair of this committee, and then I haven't served on the committee since then. There are three things I'd like to bring up that I'd like the committee to work on this year. One is Federal Way needs an inclusive park, a park that is built for all abilities and ages. We have bits and pieces in some of our parks, but we do not have an inclusive park. And a city of 100,000 people, plus or minus 5,000, depending on what census you're looking at, we need to have an inclusive park. I've talked with our state delegation, and they would, this is, the next legislative session is a long session, and they are willing to work with us, especially Representative Taylor. I'd also, I was not at the last meeting in February, as I had surgery that day, but I did watch it later, and a Parks Commissioner, Monty Stewart, came and talked about a wind phone in the park. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. A low-income kind of attraction, and I think it would be an added attraction. I know that they've picked a spot, I believe it's Dumas Bay, somewhere at Dumas Bay. But I would like to see that move forward. And then the third thing I'd like this committee to work on is the trees and flags on Campus Drive. We have a contract as a city that includes the Seroptimus and the county, and says who's going to take care of what with the flags on Campus Drive. A year ago, we had a meeting with John Hutton, the mayor, I believe EJ was there, Amanda Miller from the Seroptimus was there, I was there. The flags are the trees are overtaking the flags, and the trees I can't see that they were trimmed at all last year to allow the flags to fly free. Those trees are also impacting the road and the sidewalks. And I love trees. My husband works for the largest tree company in the world. So trees are very important to us, but these trees are not the right trees to be on that road. And I would like to see this committee do some work on how we can get those flags to be flying free and get appropriate sized trees along Campus Drive.
Okay, thank you so much, and I think we'll have discussion about
Well, you're absolutely right. Those are the wrong trees. The wrong trees were planted there. To correct the record, we absolutely trimmed every single tree out there last year, and those flags flew free right before, we did it right before Flag Day. We were out there, we got closed one lane of Southwest Campus Drive, Campus Drive. We closed one lane and trimmed those trees, but they are the wrong trees, you're absolutely correct. They interfere with the flagpoles without question, they beat the flags to death. We have to replace very expensive flags every single year. And so you're not wrong about that, that's absolutely true. And those are very significant trees too. That's the problem and the dilemma. We're unashamed tree huggers in the Parks Department, and we love trees. Would hate to see them go. Moving the flagpoles is an unbelievably expensive proposition to do, so it's a tough conundrum to be in. You're absolutely right about the flags and the trees being in conflict with each other.
The issue continues to be the veterans, especially the veterans who approach me, who feel we're not honoring the flags. And I agree with them.
If you recall last year too, we also went out there and hand cleaned every single one of those 50 poles, which was a daunting, brutal, labor-intensive job. Right, we did that right before the Flag Day as well.
And we appreciated that.
So it's a tough situation where we're kind of stuck with a situation that's very unpleasant. It's wildly expensive to move those flagpoles, and it's going to be wildly unpopular to cut down those trees. So it's a choice well above my pay grade. So that's going to be decided by you and the mayor, and we'll do what we're told, but it's a very difficult situation to be in.
You know, I think that the flagpoles along Campus Drive, especially by the Aquatic Center, which brings so many people to the Northwest, are very impressive, and I don't want to see them go. I think that it's unique to Federal Way, and we just need to love those flagpoles and those flags, and somehow get those trees to not grow.
Actually, we're looking for a reverse fertilizer that will shrink them, yeah.
You know, other than going in and trimming the trees every single spring, I don't know there isn't an answer other than replacing those trees with something more appropriate.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So, I know people agree with me, but nothing is being concrete. You know, it's frustrating. It's a fight I've fought for several years, and I have veteran organizations come to me and they're upset that they don't see any change. And so it's frustrating for me too.
Well, we did trim every single tree last year. So, I mean, it's not like there's no change but we can't hack the trees to death because we'll kill them.
Correct.
So it's a very delicate thing. We had arborists look at every one of those trees, and we cut as much as we possibly could without putting the tree in harm's way and damaging it. So again, I've said it 5 or 6 times, and I don't want to be repeating myself, but it's a difficult situation. So.
I would like to work on a long-term term solution to this, because every year it's the same issue.
Yeah.
And it's worth having the flagpoles there, it's worth having trees there, but we need a better solution than what we have. And it will take money, but we need to be working towards a solution and not just reacting to every year trying to trim the trees or whatever. So, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So do you want this to be discussed at a further
I would like,
date then?
yes, I would like, especially the inclusive park and the,
No, this
Oh, yes.
particular one about the tree also. All
Yeah.
3. Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Any other? Okay. So our next Parks, Recreation, Human Services, Public Safety meeting is May 14th at 5 p.m. With that, we'll adjourn this meeting at 6:28 p.m. Thank you so much.